You may be wondering if you're seeing this correctly, and I can assure you, you are. This is a grand touring or bagger bike being thrashed round a circuit.
Section, and you can see Travis misses a gear there, goes a little bit wide.
That the rear wheel and the engine.
These monsters look so out of place, but that is what makes them fun to watch. But how on earth does a racing series like this actually come about? Well, today I'm going to show you everything you need to know about this insane racing series. It all started in October 2020 when a special one-off event was held by Moto America at Laguna Seca. Teams rocked up with race prep versions of the Indian Challenger and the Harley-Davidson Road Glide. Now, while there were only 12 riders for this one-off event, it attracted some pretty big names, including Tyler O'Hara, Michael Barnes, and Frankie Garcia, to name a few. Now, the event gathered millions of views online, and it became so popular it wasn't long before a 3-race series was announced for 2021. Not only was it popular with spectators, Harley-Davidson actually greenlit a factory team for the 2021 season. The only caveat was they greenlit it 4 months before round 1, and the engineers had to build the bike in their own time. It wasn't ideal, but somehow they made it work. Fast forward to 2023 and 2024, there's more teams and riders than ever, and there's now 7 races across the season. The series itself follows a pretty standard set of rules, much like any other series. There's regulations that need to be adhered to for bike development, and the other rules are generally in line with the standard Moto America guidelines. Aside from those points, this really is an alien form of motorsport. It's a bit like truck racing, insanely fun to watch, but it looks so out of place at the same time. For this video, we're going to focus on 2 specific bikes, and that's the Harley-Davidson Road Glide and the Indian Challenger. These are currently the only 2 bikes in the King of the Bagger series. The road-going versions of these bikes are pretty similar. Both weigh around 370 kilos, and both have similar displacements from their gigantic V-twin engines. The Road Glide has a 2.1 litre engine, and the Indian Challenger has a comparatively small but still enormous 1.8 litre engine, with both of them producing around 120 horsepower and 125 pounds-feet of torque. Just to put that into context at how big these engines are for bikes, the average engine size for a car in the UK in 2018 was 1.6 litres. Now, just to clear any confusion up if there ever was any, these bikes are not sports bikes. However, over the years, more sportier iterations of these bikes have been introduced. Take the Harley-Davidson Road Glide ST and the Indian Challenger Elite. They do sacrifice some comfort for performance, but still, there's no mistaking that these bikes are not ready-to-race machines, not by a long shot. So how does one of these teams take one of these standard bagger bikes and turn it into a tracked weapon? As you would imagine, a lot of time, engineering work, and money are involved. Exact specs are actually quite hard to find, and teams are pretty secretive, which is understandable. But I've managed to get as much information as I can on how they turn these bikes from road to track use. Let's start with the one that everyone wants to know, and that is the cost. How much do these bikes actually cost to develop and build? Now, these bagger bikes can cost up to a staggering $500,000 to engineer and build. Let's just take a moment to compare that with what it costs to build a superbike for something like Moto America or World Superbikes. Superbikes take around $250,000 to $300,000 to build. So really, it's not that great of a deal. Specifics on performance figures again are quite hard to come by, but let's assume that the Road Glide and the Challenger produce similar performance figures. From a source talking about the Road Glide, once all of the engine modifications are done, these bikes can produce up to 170 brake horsepower and 140 pounds-feet of torque. The most impressive figure of these two is the torque figure. 140 pounds-feet of torque is pretty close, or in some cases more, than what a World Superbike can actually produce. Now again, I don't have exact figures, but I did read on some specific sections at certain tracks, a bagger racing bike is faster than the Superbike class in Moto America. Granted, it's probably not for very long, but it's still impressive nonetheless. So with enough money, you can make these bikes pretty powerful and really fast in a straight line. But there's so many other things to consider when building a race bike. And one of the main concepts of building anything for track use is to make it as light as possible, which is tricky when you're starting with something that weighs 370 kilos. Getting that figure down may actually seem quite easy in practice, but diminishing returns kick in pretty quickly. Removing weight from these bikes is much easier than removing weight from a superbike, for example, purely because there's just more to remove. Now we're talking things such as lights, infotainment systems, mirrors, and things like that. They're easy to remove, and that saves a surprising amount of weight. But going beyond that starts to up the costs. For For these bikes, forged alloys replace the standard ones from the road bikes. There's carbon fibre fairings and saddlebags. Yes, you heard that correctly. And teams even go as far as machining the swing arms out of one-piece billet aluminium, all in the name of lightness. Now, when all of the weight saving is said and done, these bikes come out at a staggering 90 kilos lighter than when they started. And no matter how much you try, you're never going to save that from a V4 or an R1. This does bring the weight of these bikes to around 280 kilos, which is still pretty heavy, but it's some really impressive savings nonetheless. Now, you're probably already thinking this, but braking performance and the stopping power from these bikes needs to be pretty impressive as well. We're talking about something that can hit upwards of 170 or 180 miles an hour, and trying to get 280 kilos stop from that speed takes power. Luckily, this was also thought of by the engineers, and they come with 330mm discs at the front with 4-pot Brembo calipers, and 300mm discs at the rear with Brembo 2-pot calipers. So we've talked about the cost, power, weight, and the braking. But what about actually being able to get round a track properly? More specifically, being able to generate any sort of competitive lean angle. Let's take a look at the front profile of a standard superbike. Notice the superbike is as slim as it can realistically be. This allows it to achieve the best lean angle possible and to avoid dragging any parts of the bike on the ground. Now look at the bagger bike's front profile. Its width stops it from being able to produce any real lean angle at all. Harley-Davidson claims 32 degrees of max lean angle from the standard Road Glide, with the Indian Challenger claiming 31 degrees of max angle from their standard road going version. And that simply isn't enough. You can't get it round the track without something clipping or dragging. The race prep baggers need to achieve a lean angle of around 55 degrees. So to achieve this, they need to be a lot higher off the ground than the standard versions. They've also got some limitations as well. For example, they don't have any way for rear sets to be fitted onto the bikes. So the transmission covers and primary drive covers are machined with bespoke pegs. To give you an idea of how high these bikes actually sit, the seat height is around 4 inches higher than that of a standard superbike. Now, to cope with the weight and how high these bikes actually have to sit, specialised suspension components are manufactured for the bikes with stiffer spring rates than you would otherwise need on almost any other bike. Now, 10 newtons per millimetre is a pretty standard spring rate for a sports bike. These bikes, however, have spring rates anywhere from 11 to 13 newtons per millimetre. The king of the bagger series provides a unique style of racing, and while it's not the most conventional form of the sport, I urge you to go and check it out. Check out these videos here and make sure you like and subscribe to the channel. Thank you all so much for watching, take care, and I'll see you in the next one.